What are some useful psychological facts or tricks one should know? Story 1. Little kids are literally incapable of seeing others' perspectives. It's called theory of mind, and you don't get it until you're 5 or so. Before that, you're like a little sociopath. This is why I think my niece is a genius. My definition of genius anyway. It seems like since she was a toddler, she was always fascinated by how other people interacted with each other. It sometimes felt like she would say something just to observe the ripple effects among the adults. She's 11 now and has really advanced emotional intelligence. It's pretty unusual for a kid. I wonder what kind of adult she'll turn out to be. Story 2. Pay attention to body language, where the feet point, where the eyes are looking, positioning of the arms. It can be very telling of their mood. People try to hand you things when selling or advertising because the act of physical reception makes you more likely to pay attention/donate/buy. In a similar vein, car salesmen and the like will often offer drinks or snacks or something when opening the interactions. Receiving them makes you more likely to buy. Lots of sales positions rely on psychological manipulation. When on the phone, the person who first hangs up has the upper hand during the next conversation, be it in person or on the phone. Due to our current culture, eye contact and silence carry a lot of weight. Becoming fluent in either can impact your presence among others. Again, silence can be used during bargaining. If you make your stance clear and cease speaking, the other party will often continue talking, often giving away their position or voluntarily ceding to your stance in an effort to fill the silence. The touching of arms, hands, or shoulders is a power move used to assert dominance. This is why the man in the suit will often put his hand around the other's back while reprimanding or commending him. Story 3. I used to call people who had committed fraud when working in banking. Silence is such a wonderful thing when trying to get people to talk. They naturally feel awkward and try to fill the silence. I did this at an interview a while ago. I said what I needed to say, paused, looked at them and smiled, and they smiled back. And I smiled back. After what felt like 2 seconds, I asked if they weren't satisfied with my answer and if they'd like me to elaborate, and they said that it was all fine. Pretty sure they wanted me to talk and reveal more. I was talking about why I want to leave my job and stuck to the most important reasons. Story 4. If you want someone to like you more, ask them for a small favor, something they're likely to say yes to. It seems counterintuitive. You might expect that doing a favor for them is the way to go, but no, the brain is constantly justifying. So while they're doing a favor for you, the brain will logic out, why am I doing this? I must like that person enough to do this for them. And they'll like you more. Of course, this has a limit. Ask them for too much too often and it'll backfire for sure. But used right, it works really well. It works way better if you thank them very enthusiastically afterwards. Plus, subconsciously, they feel you owe them, which also builds relationships. This makes it more likely they'll feel comfortable around you and ask you for favors. Story 5. Give kids a choice when trying to get them to do something. Would you like broccoli or carrots with lunch? When trying to get them to eat. Do you want mom or dad to tuck you in? When trying to get them to go to bed. It's not 100% by any means, but giving them the power of choice helps them feel in control and less likely to freak out. It might work with adults too, to be honest. I just use it with my niece and things go so much smoother. Story 6. Reverse psychology. Just moved in with 2 friends who are a couple. Girl accomplishes getting boy to do things she wants done but doesn't know how to do herself, cooking certain meals, starting fire in the wood stove, etc., by trying to do them in front of him, after which he'll exclaim, "Let me do it, you don't know what the heck you're doing," because he usually won't do it if asked. Story 7. Here's what I've learned. Human beings have an innate instinct to pick up on little tricks and learn to be disgusted by them. Smiling is good and makes people like you more, unless you do it too much, in which case you will terrify people. A strong handshake is a good thing, unless you make it too strong, then you come off as a classless douche. Using a girl's name in a sentence can help fast-track intimacy between you and her. I've heard so many girls complain about guys using their name too much. Just look at ads and how aggressive they have to be now compared to in the past. Our shields are up. Human beings are adept at picking up on little psychological tricks used against them, even if they don't know it. So in other words, most of these answers will work in the short term, but have a high potential of making you off-putting in the long run. Story 8. Negotiating. Most people are nice. I'm nice too. It's very easy to use this knowledge to your own advantage. Example, when someone says something they think or want, the most natural thing for them right after is to try and balance it out by a counter-argument, because they don't want to be perceived themselves as rude. As in, I really want a raise. I know it's not been the easiest year for the company. When you say something you want, shut up, just stop talking. It can be silent for 20 seconds, let them respond to it. It'll be a lot harder for them to minimize it than for you. From the other end of the table, when they said something they want, just let them talk. Once they start down-talking their point of view demand, just chime in. They'll give up on it. They brought up that it was a bad idea themselves. There. You can now easily outmaneuver nice people in many one negotiations. Story 9. Most people's sense of emotion outweighs their sense of logic. If you can take emotion out of the equation, you can gain the upper hand in many situations by logically assessing where the other person's emotions will guide their thinking. Then you can use logic to determine when to sprinkle some emotion of your own in there and when to say what will get exactly the emotional response you want. Story 10. Understand how people's behaviors can be different depending on the context. For example, studies have shown that judges will give harsher sentences when they are hungry. So just because someone is nice/mean/rude/etc. in one situation doesn't mean they will act that way in all situations. This is known as the fundamental attribution error. People have a tendency to believe that other people's actions are based on their own internal characteristics as opposed to external factors. For example, if they see someone slip, they will think that person is clumsy, whereas if they themselves slip, they will think the floor is too slippery. This is related to another psychological concept, the self-fulfilling prophecy. The idea is that you can cause something to be true based on positive feedback between your belief and your behavior. For example, this person was curt to you before, so you assume they are rude. When you talk to them again, you raise your voice. In turn, that person senses your hostility and responds in a brusque manner, thereby confirming to you that this person is rude. Whereas if you can realize that perhaps this person was rude because they just had a bad day, then your future interactions might be different. Of course, sometimes people are just a-holes. Story 11. There's a thing I was taught during counseling to take notice of your body on a physical level. For example, a deep breath or sigh, bouncing leg, butterflies, restless hands, clenched shoulders, tight chest, that kind of thing, and not judge them. Just take notice. Taking note of these things helped me relax and be less anxious mentally for whatever reason, and to identify the feelings associated. I forget what it's called, but it helped me a whole bunch. Story 12. More so just interesting to see. Move your arms occasionally to various positions or perform various minor gestures, such as crossing them. It works better in one-on-one conversations more, but you'll notice the other person will tend to do the same action. Most people aren't aware of it, funny to point out later. It's a subconscious thing we tend to do to socially fit in with the majority. Story 13. Cialdini has some tricks to convince people of influence. They are reciprocity. If you do something for someone else without expecting anything back, they will probably do something back. Example, Steam gives you free games. This makes you want to pay full price for other games because you got free games. Scarcity, if there's a limited amount of something you are urged into buying it. Example, any limited edition ever. Commitment and consistency. If I do step 1, I'll probably do step 2 as well. Example, if I put something in my online shopping basket, I might as well sign up for the website. Social proof. Something is probably true if others say so. Example, reviews on websites. Many good reviews will convince you that the product is good. Authority. Something is probably true if someone you expect to be knowledgeable about the topic says it is. Example, a scientist approving of a product in a commercial. Liking. People are convinced more easily if they like you. Example, if you look good, people like you more. If they like you, you can convince them. Story 14. Physical contact can be incredibly influential when used properly. A nice slap on someone's back when greeting them, if well done, can give the impression of comfort and put your company at ease. Comfortable body language and light, appropriate touching does wonders for your charisma. Also, men don't like to be approached and spoken to directly. Try to interact with them from the side, or slightly tilt yourself from directly facing men to make them feel more comfortable while speaking with you. Story 15. The old Q trick. Ask someone to draw an imaginary Q on their forehead. What you're looking for is the way the little swish on the Q goes. If they draw it to their right, your left, then that means they are drawing it as they would naturally see it and are only conscious of their perception. To you it would look backwards. However, if they draw it to their left, your right, then they are actively conscious of how you perceive it and want it to be facing you the correct way. People who do this method are more inclined to be good liars and/or manipulators. Story 16. Anchoring is a useful cognitive bias. This helps explain why highball and lowball negotiating tactics can work. If I ask you how much you'd like to get paid for a job, then you have to think of a number while also worrying about what would be appropriate. You don't want to either undersell or oversell yourself and risk being taken advantage of or looking foolish. Instead, I provide anchors to let you know roughly what I want you to think is reasonable. In this example, the job you're negotiating a salary for, normally $80,000 per year, but you don't know that because you're new. As the hiring manager, I do know this and I don't want to pay you that much, so when we negotiate, I say, how much salary do you expect? Roughly $65,000. That puts in your mind that $65K is a reasonable number. You may not push for exactly $65K, but you will usually pick a number close to it because I anchored your expectations. The key to this cognitive bias is, it needs to be the first number brought up. Story 17, the fundamental attribution error is an important social psychology bias that we should all be aware of. It is the phenomenon where when something happens to me, I take into account my environment and external factors that might have made that happen. I am drowning in student loan debt. Older generations told me to do this when I was too young to understand. Politicians and corporate figures have created a system that is harming me. Whereas when bad things happen to other people, it is because of an internal innate characteristic of that person. He is drowning in student loan debt because he chose to major in English. This could be applied to many political issues today, including a lack of empathy towards others. Story 18. My psychology prof, a doctorate, taught us these things about studying for exams. Be in the position, clothes you're going to write the exam in, X sitting upright in an uncomfortable chair, or at a desk, or in a comfy hoodie. Try to avoid things like sitting on your bed or on the floor, listening to a song or to a small collection of songs while studying that you can repeat right before the exam to get your brain in the right mindset. Try organizing songs to certain theories and limit the amount to about 4 songs max. Humming them during the exam will help you to remember things. Always study with someone even if they aren't studying the same thing as you. Your competitive nature will kick in. If you can't do it with people, study in front of a mirror. Never study all at once. And chances are, if you haven't learned what you need to in the 24 hours prior, you probably won't remember it come exam time. There's no real point in cramming the night before. A good night's sleep is much more useful to what your brain already knows. Read the exam 3 times in total. The first time for questions you're absolutely positive on. Fill those in immediately. The second time is for the ones you think you know, and mark them on the side with what you believe is the right answer. You can also use this read-through on multiple choice and eliminate answers you know to be wrong. Your initial feeling about them is usually the right one, and reading them again will only allow doubt to creep in and skew you off the right path. She said try your hardest to get rid of at least 1 or 2 of the available answers. If you can't eliminate any, write bullet points of what you do know on the topic or thoughts. Something might lead you back to the right track. The third time is just to get questions answered with the best guess. Story 19. I read this on Reddit from someone who claimed to be a child psychologist or something, but kids like repetition because it creates a sense of security for them. That's why kids like to watch the same movies over and over again, and why my daughter now likes for me to read her the same book 5, 6 times in a row. I think that explains why structure and rules with real consequences for breaking them are important to the development of a healthy child. Story 20. How to deal with a sociopath. This may seem a little specific for this thread, but I found something that works for me and thought I would share it. I spent far too much of my time Googling solutions to this problem because I work with a sociopath, and I'm not calling him this to insult him. He really does have a personality disorder, and the only thing close to a descriptive match for his behavior was sociopath. After it got to the point where no one was comfortable being around him, and tension became very high in the office, I felt I had to do something. I watched coworkers go to my boss, and the thing is, this person was doing a lot of things to subtly screw with people. Things that sound very petty and if told one by one makes the person complaining look like he is weak. The key to all of this is, that is intentional on the sociopath's part. They are intentionally playing a game where they understand the rules and they determine the outcome. The trick is basically this: do not engage. This sounds obvious, but here's the thing. I've watched coworkers try to talk to him. There is no one home to talk to that resembles a human being. I've had coworkers tell him to F off. This does work, but not for their benefit, and now they've lost his game because they've given him an in or a means to continue the conversation and to continue his game. Story 21. I've been told I can be very scary. I am constantly perceived as an authority. It has been this way for a long time. This always creates challenges in social settings, so I have learned to act unsure about things or bumble around with simple mechanics to create an equilibrium between me and them. This works great on macho men and timid women. I'm a mechanic, so I'll drop a wrench or fumble something simple. I'll also deliberately stumble for words or phrases until I get a small encouragement from them. Usually they start trying to help you work out the story or phrase. Then their guard is down and you can then kill them. Works every time. Story 22. People memorize objects by shape and color imprint first, then layer on details after. If you change the shape of an object in their memory, they just lose it. You can make someone's lighter disappear, for example, by simply standing it up and moving it a few inches on a mildly cluttered table. This results in the person using idle memory to go back to the object only to find it doesn't fit their memory and don't tend to reprioritize what they are looking for right away. I've seen it done with entire packets of biscuits on the arm of a chair. I didn't believe it at first, so I tested it on my mates, and it is surprisingly easy to do and does work. The trick is not to get noticed doing it. Story 23. If you disagree with someone and want to change their mind, you should start your sentence with, "I agree with you, but," even if you don't agree with a single thing and your following sentence contradicts their entire argument. They are more likely to agree with you. It's based on the principle that we dislike hearing negative things, and so if something is phrased in the positive, we are more likely to listen. Story 24. A few of the ones I've read are bordering on manipulative, so just gonna make this point real quick. But firstly, to differentiate manipulative crap, at least as I would, there is extortive manipulation and affirmative manipulation. Extortive manipulation coerces people to do things they otherwise wouldn't, and is what comes to mind with the word manipulation. You screw with someone to get them to do what you want, not what they want. This is usually out of selfishness, possibly through narcissism or sociopathy apathy, and is usually seen as convincing someone to do something for you at their expense, in a parasitic rather than symbiotic way. Affirmative manipulation is usually used to calm someone, and is done usually to try to help comfort them, more or less selflessly. People don't like being extorted, that's obvious. If they pick up on it, all hell will break loose. Even if they don't, it's unethical. Don't do it. That was a tangent, sorry. Like half of my family members are extortive manipulators, so I pick up on this crap and it makes me flip the F out. Also, I have a pretty minimal understanding of this stuff besides what seriously not to do, so sorry. Pay attention to people's body language and tone of voice. Faster speaking usually suggests anxiety or energy. Slower speaking suggests calmness or serenity. Higher voice suggests excitement. Lower voice suggests seriousness. Body language, feet in particular, are pretty telling. People's feet often face who they want to talk to or are focused on. My guess is this is because they want to rotate to face them most comfortably, so the torso and feet naturally turn that way. Story 25. Be the one to make the first step if you want people to trust you. People in general are careful as they know that someone might want to hurt or exploit them, so they hide themselves. If you want people to open up to you, open up to them first. Show them that you are willing to make yourself vulnerable to them in good faith. That shows good faith and trust, which in turn entices them to open up to you. Of course, there are some problems with this tactic, and that is that if you do this, people can exploit and hurt you. But there are ways around that. If you have enough life experience, you will know just how much to open up and what to open up with without putting yourself into danger. Story 26. My psychiatrist taught me a useful method for bringing yourself out of a depressive episode, a dissociative episode, etc. It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. First you count, and if you're able, say out loud 5 things you can see, then 5 things you can hear, then 5 things you can feel, not emotional, but like my bracelet on my arm or my butt against my chair, etc. Then you go through and do that again 4 times and then 3, and so on, without repeating anything. It gets harder as you go on, so it takes progressively more focus, and it makes you aware of your surroundings, so you pay less attention to your feelings for a little bit. Story 27. When talking to customer service, be clear, transparent, and encouraging. Have papers present or referral numbers at the ready. Help, but let them do their thing. Hey man, this is my problem. How can you help me get a good solution out of this? Here is everything you may need to finish this task. Thank you so much. You are my favorite person today. They often talk to, but people who will stress and brute their way through a solution. Be someone they would like to help. Be someone who you would like to talk to on your most stressed out days. Story 28. In this day and age, confirmation bias may be the most important psychological bias. Whether we realize it or not, we seek out information that reaffirms what we already believe is true and makes us feel good about our own values and choices. we may need to deliberately and uncomfortably take ourselves out of our comfort zone, whether it's reading news sources we normally don't seek out or learning about someone else's political or religious worldview to try to balance out this natural human bias.